As long as they don't hurt you. I know those jellyfish.
We are live. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call to order the October 7th regular city council meeting. Councilmember Vapurzian will not be able to be with us. He was officiating a wedding. And with that, Councilmember Gardner will be leading invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day, Lord, and we are especially thankful for the change in the seasons that's been brought to us the last few days. Thank you so much for the rain that has cooled us down and also for the cool air, Father. We're so thankful of the power that you have over our nature, Lord. Father, we're appreciative of the time that we can come together tonight to conduct the city's business, Lord. We just pray that all the things that we do, we will do what is best for this city's interest, Father, and that we will be doing the best for the residents and taking care of the tasks that we've been given to manage this city effectively, Father. Thank you so much for all of those that serve this city, both in our city employees and our protection services, Father. We just ask that you be with all of them as they are out looking out over our city every day. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have quite a council meeting lined up, and we will start with special guests and announcements. Jay Hartman from Entergy is here to talk with us about a few different things that Entergy has going on and maybe answer any questions if there are any. So with that, Mr. Hartman, please come introduce yourself. And again, thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invitation. I see some faces that I've seen before and some new faces, but I appreciate the opportunity to come out and basically discuss a couple of the outages that definitely have taken place during September timeframe. From time to time, I'll be out and about, and I don't mind at all, Mayor. I get a text from the mayor saying, what's going on with this outage, and I try to respond to him as quickly as possible with the information that I'm able to find out. But basically, what we have today is, first of all, it's a pleasure for Entergy to serve the Maumelle area as our customer. And in no way are we ever desiring for anyone to have any outages. But outages will occur because Maumelle has a real large, complex underground system, really unique as far as cities. I'm the customer service manager for all the cities north of the river to Cabot. So I work with North Little Rock, Jacksonville, Maumelle, Sherwood, and Cabot, and all the base and all that. But outside of Maumelle and maybe Chenal and Pleasant Valley, you have a lot more cities with the overhead. So that makes Maumelle a different kind of animal. So when you deal with this type of situation, it's good and bad. It definitely looks a lot better than some of the other cities in regards to appearance. But sometimes when you are actually trying to resolve some of the outages, it's tougher to actually find them and quickly repair them as you can on overhead systems. But we basically wanted to come out and discuss some of the outages and basically 2 or 3 things I want to do today. I want to explain what happened on those longer outages that happened primarily around September the 8th time frame. I want to give you guys an understanding of your system for those that may not be as familiar with how the facilities are set up out here in Maumelle. And then I'll answer any questions, and if there's any particular situations that we need to address, either I'll try to answer those if I have an answer to them. If not, I can follow up with whoever has a question about those. But if you go to the next slide, Maumelle is served from 8 circuits in this area. We got 2 substations. You have the Maumelle East substation and the Morgan substation. And we have 8 circuits that basically serve this area. We do an annual study, and this is where I also want to put to rest, the system is operating correctly. It's not failing. We have I'm going to show you where we've invested and replaced a lot of the primary conductor that some people will say has been out here for 30 years, and you know, as time has moved forward, we've invested and taken out what they call direct buried cable and put buried cable into conduit. So you'll see that in the presentation in a few minutes. But there's different factors that influence and cause problems to our system. Of course, lightning, high winds, squirrels, animals, trees, and vehicles. And you'll be surprised how many people hit those drunk switch gears that jump out in front of them from time to time. But to combat those situations, we have substation breakers, reclosers, and fuses. And I may mention a little bit more about those in a second. Go to the next slide. These are the circuits that I was just mentioning. But the key circuit that I'm going to talk about today is G740. And I wish I had a little pointer. It's kind of hard to see, especially from that angle. But it's kind of right through the middle part of Maumelle. And so I'm going to focus on that because as I was doing my study and talking to the mayor, go to the next slide. It showed that there was a pickup in outages during July and August. And then a lot of it, if you laid this year's outages over the last 2 years, it was breaker operations. And we had a lot of breaker operations on September the 8th. The next slide is going to show that better. But for this slide, I wanted to show you guys how complex the Maumelle system is. Now, this is just a snapshot because it was so big. This is the Maumelle East substation right here. You got a Morgan substation that's a little bit higher up, but I wouldn't be able to get all that on the drawing. So I just took a snapshot of it. But just for this example, this is the piece of equipment that operated on September the 8th that I'm about to talk about now. But what I want to show to some folks that may not be familiar with how this works, if an outage was to take place right now, we would send out a shift service man, because our guys are going home, they leave at 4:30, 5 o'clock. But we have a shift service man that stays, throughout the night. So they would send him out here to try to see what the problem is. Now he's in his truck, he's riding around, and if he can find something apparent, a car, you can see the car that hit the switch gear, he can report that. But if then some of the overhead, if you had a tree or something that fell over, you see a cross arm that's broke or whatever, he can report that. So he'll go do his best to try to find what's caused the outage. But when it's determined that it's something that he can't handle, then he has to call in what we call a specialty type group, which is underground crew. Now, again, this is at night, so you got to bring those folks in, they get their trucks, and then they have to come out, and then they start doing what they call a point-to-point restoration. So again, from this point here, and I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail, but just so you guys will know how this works, if you don't see nothing apparent that's evident that caused the outage, you basically start at that open point and you close it right here. And if it stays good, then you close it to right here. And you keep doing that process, until it goes out again. And then once it goes out, then you know that you found where your fault is in the system. Once you find the fault, then you isolate it, open it on both sides, and then you try to feed it from, pick up as many customers as you can from those opposite sides, leaving the faulted area out. And that's basically how our process is for an underground system. Now, if you had overhead, it would be a lot easier to repair, probably quicker, but that's just the differences on overhead and underground system. But I want you to understand that after hours, the first call is to that serviceman who's trying his best to try to figure it out. Once he said, I can't do it, I got to bring an underground crew, then those folks got to come from their homes, go get the trucks. So we're talking about an hour, maybe 2 hours before you get the underground crews out there to start doing their point to point to point. So that's kind of the reason why sometimes it takes maybe 3-4 hours before you see some actual action. Go to the next slide. So here's the slide that I was telling you. I had a little pickup. July and August, you start seeing some operations in September. It went out the off the chart there because for some reason we had a fault that was causing an imbalance at the breaker on that circuit, and that breaker was trying to close. So you saw multiple blinks on September the 8th in those people in that area. So you saw that, and then you also saw where we were doing that restoration that I was telling you about. We had the cause for that was reported to be a lightning strike to that reclosure that I was telling you guys about. So when that reclosure took that lightning strike, now I don't know if it happened immediately or eventually, but sometime around, go to the next slide. Sometime around 4:48 p.m. on that day, that OCR is what it's called, but it's a reclosure, operated. And then you saw some blinks where it was trying to restore, and then also in our process, like I explained to you, you basically have to go from equipment to equipment to try to find out where your fault. We had some underground that was actually a part of that outage also. So a decision was decided to route from 2 separate substations was the best option to solve that. And if we went back to that screen, I could show you that once we decided where that outage was, we picked up part of the load from Morgan, picked up part of the load from Maumelle East. And we end up getting everybody back on around 9:30 that night. So I don't know if any of you guys live in that area, but that should sound familiar to the time that it restored. Another outage that I saw that was pretty lengthy was on May 31st. And around 9:40 p.m., again, this is after hours, so our guy come out and he finds that the car has hit the hit the switchgear. And that was right at Carnahan, the first switchgear right there. Once you turn off Maumelle Boulevard on Carnahan, somebody just ran right into the to the switchgear there. So around 9:40, and so basically we had to do the switching to kind of isolate that piece of gear, and then we had to have a switchgear delivered. You don't just carry those around. So we keep them out at our port. So once our guys got out of here, they had it delivered. We installed it, and then we got everybody back on around 6:45 a.m. that next Saturday morning. Go to the next slide, please. So what I wanted to talk about here is the difference between this is underground wire that's buried in conduit, and then what we had in previous year was just direct buried wire, and that was just contractors 30 years ago, they put it in the cheapest way they could. But now we basically put everything in conduit. So that's a plus, that it allows the wire to last longer, but it's also easier for us to replace if we do have some wire that goes bad. So right now, if we have a boring or some wire that failed for whatever reason, we will pull that wire out and replace it with new wire. That's our policy going forward here. Possible causes of wire problems with underground wire is boring. We've got a lot of, is it Comcast or somebody who's doing a lot of our work here in Maumelle, and we have that happen just here recently, like last week. I know when I was doing this evaluation with the people involved with had this information, they said, well, today we Comcast was bored into somebody out there. Excessive rain, if that wire, if it has a nick or something when you put it in, it doesn't take but a pin size hole for moisture to get in it to cause, basically, for your circuit to open up. That's what we call a fault. So that could cause an interruption. And moisture is the same thing. So even installation of new wire can't totally prevent you having a fault on the situation. Go to the next slide. So here's what we've done in the area to date. we've invested about 500 and some $1,000 over the past 3 years in replacing that underground cable. And that's that direct buried cable that we find, or even cable that, you know, has been impacted for whatever reason. We just basically take it out and replace it now instead of trying to splice it. We basically pull in new cable. New technology, this is important. We've put about $160,000 worth of new reclosures, and that doesn't mean much to you guys, but it's a new technology that we didn't have in prior years. The one that was hit by lightning, that was replaced with a new, what we call an IPO, and that's basically a new technology that will sense a fault, but it will try to restore the power without having to send somebody out to actually do anything. So that's a plus. It's a little bit more technological type equipment, and we're going to install more of those as we continue. You got about 9 of them out here now, reclosures, and we installed 3, and I know that they're going to do 2 more, so we'll have 5 by the end of the year, and then we'll continue to replace the other ones as we go along. There's also a program that we have that focuses on circuits that have multiple problems. You know, it's just people that their job is to basically look not only in Maumelle but across our system to see where can we spend dollars efficiently to, you know, improve the reliability. And Maumelle has had about $230,000 worth of focus project work done here not too recently. And then we're going to continue proactive. Now, as part of my conversation and dealing with this here, I've got the operations group to agree to do a proactive switchgear inspection. Now, we probably got, oh man, I would say 70, 100 switch gears. I scattered all. That's the big boxes on the corner. But you have to actually just go in and open those up and see if there's any, you know, evidence of problems that might, you know, could cause a problem in the future. But we've committed to doing some inspections, visual inspections of those boxes, and it's going to take a while. They're going to have to coordinate it and take them a little bit at a time. But that's one of the proactive things that we thought that we could do just to try to see if there's anything, you know, as soon as you leave that box, something could happen. I'm not promising that, but at least we're taking those steps to look into each one of those boxes to see if anything just evidently might cause a problem. Go to the next slide. And then future reliability work. We've completed most of the backbone cable replacements, and those wiring, we did all that close to the school down the main street. I don't know the name of the street there, but that's what that picture is from not too long ago. But we've done proactive replacement of the cable. We've replaced the primary trunk lines to minimize outages, and we will continue to look at replacing neighborhood loop cable. There may be 1 or 2 neighborhoods that still have some old cable in it, and we're going to continue to look to replace that as we go forward. Installation of new switching equipment. That's the upgraded reclosers that I mentioned. Again, that's going to maybe even save us from sending somebody out there. It's going to send out a signal to see if the fault might be cleared, and then it's going to try it. And if it holds, then we won't have to send somebody out. The last part of that is pad-mounted reclosures to reduce exposure. Now, again, back to that picture that had all those equipment on it. Our reclosures are up on a pole because that's the only ones that we have right now. There are some that's not a part of Entergy's current equipment use, but they do have some pad-mounted reclosures. Now, if we did have those, then we could actually maybe sectionalize a line that may not have as many, say you had 1,000 people behind one reclosure, and just for simplicity, we could maybe put one that's a pad mounted halfway in between there and only have 500, which would be less exposure. Not saying that the fault that caused it wouldn't happen, but you would have less people impacted. So we're looking to see if that's a Entergy, it's a policy or Entergy. The people who order our equipment have to approve for us to have these pad mounted. Right now, no one in our system uses these pad mounted, but there are some available nationwide, and we just need to see if that's something we want to implement in Entergy's territory. And then lastly, here, let's see, inspect switch gears, which I said we would do, and we'll continue to work on our focus, continue to monitor our focus circuits to see if there's additional focus jobs that need to be presented. And as we do that switchgear inspection, of course, if we find anything that needs to be repaired, then we'll repair those at the time of those are identified. Is that the last? Okay. There was a couple other ideas that came out of our discussion. Right there's a switchgear at South Oldham and Master Place that we want to put some barriers around it because it's been hit in the past by cars. So you'll probably see that happen, I would say, in the next, give me a month or 6 weeks or so. I'll get somebody to get that done. And then there's a MacArthur substation that's already under construction. Now that's gonna help in a couple ways. Currently, the North Shore Industrial Park is served off of Maumelle East substation. And we'll be able to move all of that load pretty much from the hardware store back towards the east. All that load will go to MacArthur substation. So that just releases some of the load off of Maumelle East and gives more flexibility to the Maumelle circuits. So long-term solutions, we're going to continue to install new equipment. We're going to complete our switchgear inspections, and we're going to make any adjustments or improvements that are identified during those inspections. And we're going to continue to communicate the milestones and the progress as we go. I think that's all I had, and I definitely will open it up for any questions.
Thank you. A resident had asked me if perhaps there were capacity issues. I guess the thought was, since there's new homes being built, is the Entergy system capable of handling more homes in this area?
Yes.
And I know you and I have talked about that, but I'd just like...
Yes, and I might have mentioned it in there. There is an annual study of the circuit capacities that are available out of the Maumelle and the Morgan substation. And from our study, we have ample room for additional expansion for Maumelle. So that's not a concern for us right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Scott?
I have two questions, sir.
Okay.
One is, when the techs have to go from point to point to point to see if they can find out where the fault is, we used to have a piece of equipment called a time domain reflectometer, and you would put it at the beginning of the circuit, and it would send out a signal, and the signal, of course, would stop where the fault was, and it would save a lot of time because it would tell you how many feet from your source the fault was. Does electric use anything like that?
No. Are you speaking, you've used that on underground, on telephone?
Yeah, still electric.
No, I mean, these guys, I don't go and look at anything, I'm gonna tell you. But,
It just saved a lot of time. I was just curious if it was something that was adaptable to the electrical system.
I'm not aware of it, but I'll talk to you a little bit more and see if it's something that we might need to look into. But
We always
as
used to
of
jump
right
in the
now, I
truck
can't.
and run out and look for the smoking backhoe, you know, whoever cut our cable or something, and really what we were supposed to do is latch onto that cable and send that signal out, and it would tell us how far out we had to go.
But see, well, I mean, again, there's so many pieces of equipment. I'm not sure if it would go past the first device, and
That's possible.
normally they have to open up several before they actually find
That's
where the
probably
problem is. Yeah.
And the other question was, if you put a barrier around the box, are you restricted by clear zone, or is that state-specific?
Am I restricted?
Is
Yeah,
the-
we're not gonna put it. You mean to open the doors?
No, where I used to work, we had to take all of our pedestal guards out because it was called clear zone policy. It was a state law that you couldn't put anything up that would prevent someone, that would cause someone to turn their wheel rather than hit it. So we couldn't put protection around our equipment, but I was wondering if that was state-specific or if that was federal.
I don't know if it's state or federal, but I know we could put barriers around our we've got it in other places. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I know that we can put some barriers around that one to stop them from running over it. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
no problem.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes, sir. What type of system is more reliable, an underground or an above ground? And
Ooh, that's a tricky question.
yeah,
Because, I mean, I would say an underground system is more reliable, but an underground system can be harder to find the problem. So, reliable, yes. Pretty, yes. But sometimes it could be tough to. I mean, you can ride down the street and see the fuse, or you could see something on the overhead that you can't see, and especially late at night, trying to figure out what the problem is on the underground system.
is the underground more expensive to maintain?
More expensive. It's more expensive to install. To maintain after it's in the ground and already up and running, I can't say that it's more expensive than overhead. I can't say that. But again, I'm not the one that
Keeps track of the
that
number.
runs out and does that work. It's a more expensive employee to come out and fix those problems because they have to bring a underground crew versus overhead. Most of the time, you could send a lineman out and a bucket truck, and he can tighten up or whatever you need, a arrestor, he'll do whatever he has to do. Maybe one person versus a 3-4 man crew type.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
If there's no further questions, Jay, I just wanted to thank you for coming out and talking with us. And I know that some residents had concerns, and I think some council members have been without power on an occasion or two, and so.
I understand,
was
especially if it's Sunday night football or something. That really would get me kind of stirred up.
Last night there was a lightning storm, and my 4-year-old insisted we get all of our phones close by because when the power goes out, the phones still work. So
Oh,
we
yeah,
have to talk
yeah.
about batteries. But again, thank you for coming out.
Okay.
It was a pleasure.
I'm glad to be here. Anytime, just give me a buzz.
Will do. The next order of business is a proclamation that I'd like to read. This is a proclamation declaring the week of October 14th through 18th as Chamber of Commerce Week in the city of Maumelle. Whereas the Maumelle Area Chamber of Commerce works with businesses, nonprofits, banks, industry, and merchants to advance the civic, economic, professional, and cultural life of our city. Whereas the Maumelle Area Chamber of Commerce, founded in 1991, has contributed to the civic and economic life of Maumelle for the past 28 years. Whereas this year marks the 28th anniversary of the founding of the Maumelle Area Chamber of Commerce, the city's leading broad-based business organization. And whereas the Maumelle Area Chamber of Commerce and its members provide citizens with a strong business environment that increases employment, the retail trade, and commerce and industrial growth in order to make the city of Maumelle a better place to live. And whereas the Maumelle Area Chamber of Commerce encourages the growth of existing businesses and encourages new businesses to locate in Maumelle, acting as a liaison with the city's school and the business community. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Caleb Norris, proclaim the week of October 14th through 18th, 2019, as Chamber of Commerce Week in Maumelle to acknowledge the numerous benefits and services that the Maumelle Area Chamber of Commerce provides to the businesses and the residents in our community. And so I'd like to ask Alicia Gillen to come up. Julia, you want to come get a picture as well? This pose.
We didn't want to stand up there and turn all that.
Oh, yeah. Well. There we go. Make that pictures. Awesome. Do we get to hear from you as well?
Do you want to?
Would you like to talk?
Good evening, Alicia Gillen, 16th of October. We recently did a renovation. We really want to make this a place where business can really conduct, and we can invite visitors and potential businesses into our office space. So we will be having that from 4 to 6, and we'd love for you and anyone from the community to come and join us. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The next order of business is the approval of minutes from the September 16th regular meeting. Y'all have received a copy of that in the council packet. If there are no comments, I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
We have motion and second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next order of business is public comment. I do not have any public comment cards at this time. So we will move on to the financial statement review. Ms. Vega, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Sorry I wasn't here when it was time to give the presentation. My vacation was awesome. These are the August financial statements that we're talking about. Okay, so you can see that the sanitation fund is 1% below budget. The street fund is 4% below budget, and the general fund is up 6% over budget. We have $3.9 million more than the Ordinance 438 requirements. This slide is showing our general fund revenue, which is down 3% to budget, but it's up 3.5% to prior year. County millage is up 3%. County sales tax is up 2%. City sales tax are down 3% to prior year. However, if you compare that, we've talked before about 2018 had the special audit that we received money from. We're up 13% over 2017. Police and fire revenue collected on the half-cent sales tax is over $861,000. Franchise fees are down 2%, which that number's gone down compared to last month. Street fund revenue is up 4% over prior year. County millage is up 6% over prior year. State turnback is up 2% over prior year, and street aid is up 4% over prior year. Sanitation fee revenues, they're up 58% over prior year, and this is due to the CAW change. The city billed in advance, and so that's exacerbating that difference. August 31st, 2018 was the last month that the city did sanitation billing. Expenses in the general fund, overall, expenses are under budget 10% and up 9% over prior year, primarily due to police and fire. Administration is up 8%, predominantly due to additional personnel and the pension for the former mayor. Police is 5% below budget, up 8% to prior year, again due to personnel and the loss of revenue from KMAC Village. for 911 services. Fire is under budget 5% and up 9% over prior year, primarily due to personnel. Public Works is 8% under budget and up 15% to prior year due to personnel reallocations, fuel, grounds, and building maintenance increases. Parks are under 7% to budget and up 9% over prior year, primarily due to the Rolling Oaks facility and increased electricity across all facilities. Seniors is 11% under budget and up 9% over prior year, primarily due to personnel, concession stand supplies, and again, electricity. City services are 30% under budget and up 25% to prior year, and this is primarily due to workers' comp insurance increases and street lighting increases. This slide shows that 27% of the general fund budget spending goes to police, 26% goes to fire, 13% goes to parks, and you can kind of not see the rest. The city should have used 8/12 or 67% of their annual budget, and all departments are under this threshold of 67%. The street fund expenditures, overall, the street expenditures were 27% under budget and 29% under prior year. Personnel is up 4% over prior year due to the reallocation of salaries between Public Works and Streets. Operating expenses are 58% under prior year due to the reimbursement lag for the third entrance design work. Sanitation personnel is 6% under prior year, again due to the reallocation of employees, and operating is $46,000 over prior year, primarily due to increases in vehicle maintenance, tipping fees, and professional fees to CAW. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Mosley?
Do we know when the 2018 audit will get underway or possibly be completed?
We're working very hard.
No firm date.
No firm date.
So, that is correct. We don't have a firm date, but we can jump into, we'll be discussing some of the status maybe later on in,
Okay.
I don't know, one of the general fund budgets also.
I will defer my questions till then.
Councilmember Tierney?
You mentioned that the fees are up with CAW. Does that have to do with their increase on recycled?
It has to do with, we didn't have those fees last year. We turned the billing over. The first fees for 2018 would have been September or October
Okay, thank you.
that we had that expense.
Okay.
If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to accept the financials.
So offered. Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So moved?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Unfinished business. The first item is the third reading of ordinance 984 regarding surplus property. Madam City Clerk Treasurer, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 984, an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the Maumelle City Code to increase the value of surplus personal property permitted to be sold on authority of the mayor, and to increase the value of surplus personal property that must be sold by public bid or marketing process.
Councilmember Holt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As everybody sees on their desk, I had the letter I had requested from the mayor to get an accounting of all of the ordinances, everything, all surplus material that we've sold from January of 18 through August of 2019. But he was gracious enough to give me everything that he had available, and I think this is a pretty good accounting of it. So I don't have an Excel on my computer, and I couldn't print it, so I had to get him to do me a favor and print it and give it to everybody for me. So that's, at any rate, it makes a better conversation. Everybody has their own copy. If you see, there are 24 items on this entire page. It covers from January the 5th of 2018 only through February the 28th of 19. So we don't have March, April, May, June, and July. If you take out the month of October last year and the month of November of last year, that accounts for 12 items in those 2 months. In all due respect, it might have been because Mayor Watson was trying to clean out the merchandise before he left office, but I don't know. Doesn't matter. Well, all I can tell you is that it was my impression that there really hadn't been very much merchandise sold at all. So I sat down and I went through month by month by month from January of 18 through August of 19, and I wrote it down in very simple handwriting terms. There is neither of these 12 items that are listed in those 2 months are on our agenda for those 2 months. It is not on the agenda. All I did was I read the agenda, looked at every item, and if it was nothing there, I just put none and went on to the next one. And I found very, very, very little overall that was actually listed for us to sell. But aside from that, there are 24 items that are listed in that actually 13-month period. 11 items are listed. I think the question that we're sort of talking about here is that how many items are below 1,000? Should we raise the amount as to what the council gets involved in or not? So as you can see before you, if you count them, there are 11 items in that period of time, actually from August of last year until February of this year, that are below $1,000, and everything else is above 1,000. So relatively speaking, it's very, very, very few. Again, if you take out those 2 months, that accounts for 12 items, and there's only 24 on the entire sheet. So perhaps we won't have that repeated again. All of that is to say that I do not, for my part, that is the facts as best I can present it. The numbers are what they are. I cannot comprehend what the advantage would be to change an ordinance just for the simple purpose of changing it. I don't see that we are overworked or overconcerned. Once these things, Mr. Mayor, I might would even ask them, once these items are turned in and we vote on it to sell it, what is the process that happens from there on? I mean, we're not involved in it. What is the next step? Where does it go, and who handles what, and how does it get done when we sell property at whatever price?
Typically, that goes to the city clerk who handles that.
What happens once it's approved by the council? The mayor signs it, and then the particular department the item is in puts it on Gov Deals if they so choose. They have the option of setting the time frame. Usually, it's about 30 days, and it's a great way of looking at Gov Deals is thinking of it like a governmental eBay. And so that's basically the process. It's about a 4-week process.
Right. But we're not involved in it in any way whatsoever. We never see it or hear of it again. We just vote yes or no, which tells me that, basically other than us, as had been pointed out, well, it does come before us and we have to talk about it, and we do, as did the little 2002 Blazer. I understand that we have it, but it's not because it's going to take quite a bit of money to fix the front end, if I've understood, Mr. Mayor. So we're trying to decide on what to do about that, I understand. But I don't see the issue of us trying to change it. And again, if you take out those 2 months, I feel like that the situation is that the city council, I won't recite it again, has that mission of being control and finance and of all personal and real property, and for us to take away part of what we do now. I got here very early at the last council meeting, and the mayor was here, so I had some chance to visit with him. He made a point about the bond issue that's coming up on 2033, and he made the point that most likely most all of us won't be here by then. So we can account for what we do, but we can't account for what people do in councils after us and after we're gone. If I'm here in 33, that's going to be quite a miracle. So at any rate, I would encourage, all of that is to say, I would encourage the council to, respectfully, it's something to look at, but I would have to vote no in all due respect. And I see no purpose in us doing it and giving up any part of what the regulation says the duties of the city council are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Councilmember Holt, and as I said at the last meeting, I certainly understand what the alderman is wanting to do here, just kind of cut down on some detail, but I would like to hang on to the what little detail that we do have come through, and I think it's in our best interest just to keep watching that. There's a lot of checks and balances and controls, accounting, and over assets and things like that, and that's kind of a control over assets. Makes us kind of look at them a little closer. We may hear about some control issues that are still ongoing here later in the meeting, so I'm just inclined to keep things as they are. So I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My intent with this was to help streamline government a little bit. And if you go back to the kind of the survey that I mentioned 3 weeks ago of the other cities that were similar to our size, most of them grant their mayor the authority to dispose of assets north of $5,000. I think one was $7,500, one was $20,000. So my intent was to give the mayor a little bit more authority. He currently has $100 of authority. And so the reason I wanted to keep things like this off of the agenda, and Mr. Holt, I'm with you. I don't remember seeing some of these things come up last year, but when I look at this, I see an ice maker for $111 or a part to an ice maker, and I don't want the council to have to debate an ice maker part because it's outside of his authority. It's worth $111. My intent was to raise that up to $2,000. That's still going to be lower than many other cities in the state of Arkansas. So,
Councilmember Scott?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 984.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 984. Is there any further discussion on that? Councilmember Tierney?
When it comes up to, declaring an item that you're going to sell, what kind of time is involved as far as yourself and the city clerk to make all the process to bring this in front of the city council? What kind of time saving per item would you have if we were to approve this?
Well, that's an interesting question. So currently, as we are preparing to remodel City Hall, the front of the building has been storage for quite some time. So what I think has happened is people have just started storing things rather than disposing of them for quite a while. Some stuff may have intended to be stored short term and then disposed of more thoroughly at a later time, or maybe just stored and then used. So we have an incredible amount of stuff from dot matrix printers to you name it in the front of the building. And I don't know if that really answers your question.
So
but
basically, a lot of stuff that you would be selling if you had this ordinance already in place.
There will certainly be things we're bringing to the county. If the threshold is $100, we will be bringing some more resolutions to deal with some things.
Mayor, if I may.
You may.
I think one of the mayor was on the right track when he said that a lot of things just ended up in the storage, and I think that's what's happened a lot of times. Things have just went to storage because people didn't, for whatever reason, want to fill out the paperwork, go through, kind of the red tape, if you will, and it just sat. And what I'm finding as I'm going through these boxes and looking at this furniture, it's somewhat of a health hazard, I think. We have so many items covered in mold. We have some of my documents, I mean, they're green, they're deteriorating. They're in like hazmat bags. So, and the vehicles that we have, not only were there wasp nests, there were rats in one vehicle. So I think it sort of discourages people to go through the process. In my opinion, $2,000 is nominal, considering losing something altogether and not getting anything for it because it's just sitting.
So something like this would really streamline things for you?
Absolutely.
As far as to, clearing things up?
I think the big ticket items are what you guys really would be most interested in, the vehicles, the plotters, those sort of things that have value. But like the ice maker or the office chair, I don't think you guys want to burden yourselves with that. Or you might, I don't know. I can just tell you, being in the forefront day to day, those things tend to just sit instead of, the paperwork being filled out, going through the process. Because at the end of the day, you're only going to get a few bucks for the stuff, the big stuff you guys see.
Is there ever an example where we're paying a warranty on something that we might otherwise just dispose of?
No.
Okay, this is all just completely obsolete stuff.
Well, or no longer used.
No longer
stuff.
useful.
But we do have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, please roll call vote.
Councilmember Holt? No. Councilmember Mosley?
No?
Councilmember Saunders?
Yes.
Councilmember Scott? Yes. Councilmember Gardner?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Motion passes. The next order of business is the second reading of Ordinance 986, amending certificate pay for uniformed officers. Madam City Clerk Treasurer, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 986, an ordinance amending the procedure for determining certificate pay for uniform employees of the police and fire departments and for other purposes.
This is on second reading and will be on third reading at the next council meeting. The idea is that there will also be a budget resolution or a resolution setting the current certificate levels on that agenda as well. So if there are no comments or questions, we can move on to the next order of business, which is Resolution 2019-24, amending the 2019 Street Fund budget. Madam City Clerk Treasurer, if you could read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2019-24, a resolution to amend the 2019 Street Fund budget.
All right, this is the budget resolution that was on the council in September, I believe, or a little while back, about the proposed roundabout at Odom South and Club Manor. It was put out to bid, and the bids came in pretty dang close to the estimates. Went up a little bit from, I think the guesstimate was right around 1.1 to 1,175,000. And we have Jay Whisker and Manish Krishnan, who are the engineers that are here to answer any questions if the council has any. And with that, Councilmember Scott.
Well, I know I asked for it to be tabled until this meeting, but I still don't think we have enough information. We talked about a light. We haven't firmed up a price on that, and it was also suggested that we do some kind of traffic analysis to see if a light would be a help or a hindrance. We haven't done that. I'm not prepared to spend $1.3 million and not have more information. So if this does come to a vote tonight, I'm going to have to vote no. If someone wants to table it further, then, that's something that we could entertain as well.
So the cost estimate for the light was 275 to 325. We didn't run the traffic study or commit monies in that direction, which we could always consider add next year's budget or run a budget resolution to start that process. But Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. Those that's been around long enough know that for a couple of years I've been pushing for a roundabout because of safety. But when it came up about a traffic signal, if it's legal, I was told wrong at one time that we couldn't put a traffic signal there. If we can, I don't want to spend $1.1 million either. That's a lot of money for a roundabout. Now, if we have to, that's different. But if we can accomplish this, the goal, the safety goal, with a traffic signal, I would push for that over, and I'm just like, just like she said, I need more information. Okay, so I don't think right now I could vote for it until I know more about the traffic signal. Okay?
Thank you. Councilmember Tierney?
Have we gotten more information on the moving of that switching station by Entergy?
No, and not for lack of bugging him. I have, Mr. Suffern is my contact there, and I've sent him multiple emails. I spoke to him last week and was profusely apologetic and told me I should have something by Thursday, late in the day, and it's now Monday, and I still don't have that, so.
Yeah, with the $350,000 possible addition on top of the $1 million, that would, I think we ought to table this also till we can get some more answers.
I'd like to make a motion to table it.
Second.
Is that a
Indefinite.
indefinite table?
Yes, indefinitely.
We have a motion to table this indefinitely
Second.
and a second. Before we vote, Jay or Manish, did either of you had anything to add or just available if questions were asked?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're both available if you have questions. If you obviously have some, and if you have a need, if we need to do a traffic study, if we need to do a traffic light study, we can do those things as well.
I think that's
let us know.
necessary.
Okay. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I was just going to add, do you have any item of information that might change the council's opinion at this point as to want us to go ahead and do this? Is there any way to reduce these costs that you can see or anything?
To reduce the cost is to reduce what we put into it. I mean, it's a two-lane roundabout because you have two lanes going each direction, which makes it that big, which makes you have that much asphalt, that much rock, which increases the price. The only way to reduce it would be to make a one-lane roundabout and make people go from 2 lanes to 1 lane and then back to 2 lanes, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense
No.
from a price reduction standpoint. The switchgear of Energies with 350, that's still a big outstanding question.
As an engineer, do you have a recommendation? You see this as being a good point to put a light. Is it conducive to having a light there, you think?
Traffic lights have their pluses and minuses. It's kind of like your electric being underground or above ground. You know, a roundabout has no maintenance, with the exception of the asphalt. Traffic lights, a lot like switch gears, tend to get hit by, drivers. It happens. And when the light goes out, then the light doesn't function. The electricity goes out, the light doesn't function. A roundabout stays lit up, people just drive around, slow down, but never have to stop, for the most part.
Would you say that intersection is more conducive to a light or a roundabout?
When we started this process, we were asked to put in a roundabout, so that's where we started at the very start. So I don't know that we've looked at putting in a traffic light there. To answer your question, that would be something you need to look at. Sometimes both work well, sometimes they don't. Usually if you have a lot of left turns that hold up lights, I know people get frustrated by pulling up to a light because one car has pulled up and stopped everybody else from driving for about 30 seconds for the changing of the lights, and it's frustrating to them on the main lanes. So sometimes they work well and sometimes they don't. We'd have to look at that.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. So we have a motion and a second to table Resolution 2019-24 indefinitely. If there's no further discussion on that matter, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries. This resolution is tabled indefinitely. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming out. Now we will move on to new business. Probably the first thing on your desks, you should see a copy of Resolution 2019-33. Last week, I was at a Metro Plan benchmarking trip in Greenville, South Carolina, and we were, obviously this is a long packet, and so there was a lot of emails, phone calls, and text messages going back. We inadvertently left out the confirming resolution, which was the resolution confirming what the bonds were at. We've given that to you here. It accompanies the the resolution amending the general fund budget, which is item A. But at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to add Resolution 2019-33 to the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Madam City Clerk Treasurer, if you could please read Resolution 2019-33 by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2019-33, a resolution to ratify and to confirm the issuance and sale of franchise fee revenue refunding bonds for the purpose of currently refunding the city's outstanding capital improvement revenue bonds, Series 2012. Ratify and confirm the principal and interest payment schedule for the bonds and the terms and conditions of the sale of the bonds. Ratify and confirm the execution and delivery of a bond purchase agreement and prescribe other matters relating thereto.
That's a mouthful. So we have bond counsel and underwriters. Who wants to come up and talk first?
We're going to tag team this.
Tag team.
We had hoped, and she may still get it, that Miss Burnett would be here. She's
behind you.
Where did she? We didn't see you come in. I walked in when Jay was well, come on. We're going to wait. I am so thrilled. Trust me. I was afraid I was going to have to make up a bunch of stuff. We didn't see her come in.
Well, I apologize. I was quieter than I thought.
Really, this is all about telling you about how your bonds were sold, which, we got the numbers, but we weren't involved. So let me just say that when we were last here, you adopted a parameters resolution. I think we can jump to the conclusion and say that your bonds were sold within all those parameters. But it's always fun to have your underwriter explain how that happened. So let us be quiet and let her do the talking.
Thank you, Mr. Spivey. Hello, everyone. Leanne Burnett with Stevens. I'm very happy to report to you the results of your bond sale. It was in working with your mayor, we determined last Wednesday to go out. These were non-rated bank-qualified bonds, which bank qualification for tax-free bonds is important to banks because they can actually not only get the tax-free interest earnings, but they get a deduction on interest expense related to the bonds. So it's kind of a double benefit. We did have several banks interested, as well as insurance companies in your bonds. We, like I said, went out Wednesday morning, and the results were fabulous. I have to say that we have been watching this, we've been looking at this refunding for over a year, but in working with your mayor since January and the objectives that were outlined in the ordinance, the one that we were really working on was the city contribution. And I found some number runs that had that contribution at $225,000, had it at $175,000. So to come in, happy today to report to you at $85,000 contribution and reduce the debt by 4 years. And you can see the gross cash flow savings over $1.3 million to the city. So very well received in the market. We ended up with a true interest cost of 2.62%, an average coupon of 2.55%, and again, a final maturity of November 1, 2033. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have. But again, congratulations on another successful bond offering.
No lights are popping on. I'll jump ahead a little bit for the next resolution is amending the general fund budget. Just while we're here, we're asking to amend it by 174,000. 85,000 of that goes to the principal, and then just shy of 45,000 times 2, so just shy of 90,000 to. I guess we're switching from 2 payments a year to monthly payments, and so this year we budgeted just for the 2 payments. We didn't budget for the 2 monthly payments in November and December, and so just to point that out, that the contribution to the principal, if I'm using the right terminology, is 85, but we'll be asking for more, which should iron out over the course of a year. But if there are no other questions for Ms. Burnett? Are we good?
We're good, thank you.
Okay. So, at that point, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the resolution 2019-33.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt that resolution. All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. I notice on here an emergency clause. Are we requesting an emergency clause be enacted? Or I see,
That's for the truck route.
no,
This one.
no,
Is this also
Okay.
on this one?
I didn't think so. Well, thank you very much for coming out then. Please, I wouldn't torture you through the rest of this meeting. No, I'm just kidding. So the next order of business, I guess, right in line with this is Resolution 2019-27. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2019-27, a resolution to amend the 2019 General Fund Budget.
So I've given an overview of what this is. If there are no questions, I'd entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-27.
So offered.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All opposed, please say no. Motion carries. I just want to summarize this by saying how excited I am at this. I remember the first time Leanne and Jack Trumper came out to talk with me, and I kind of let them know that we were actually wanting to save money and not go more into debt. They left and they called back and they said, "Wait, are we on the same page here? You're wanting to reduce the debt, not borrow more?" And I was like, "Yeah." They said they've only ever seen one other city do that, and so it's nice to be in a position where the city can be. Usually, so that they came to me and said, "Hey, we can probably free up a couple $1 million for a project. Do you have any projects you want to take on?" Right? And so it's rare that the cities say no. In fact, we'd like to increase our payments a little bit to benefit the folks here in 2033 through 2037 are going to look like the heroes because they'll have all the extra money then, right? So you don't see that in politics a whole lot or government. It's always good to see that. Anyways, moving right along. The next order of business is Resolution 2019-28, amending the 2019 General Fund Budget. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only. Wait a minute. I skipped something. I skipped
Ordinance 980.
987, the first reading of Ordinance 987, truck routes.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 987, an ordinance amending Section 82-223 of the Maumelle City Code to prohibit through truck traffic on certain city streets and for other purposes.
At the outset, I see Councilmember Mosley's light on. Was that for before or
It was
this?
for
Or?
the before. I was just going to thank you for doing that, for not using this as an opportunity to spend more money.
Thank
on
you.
the bond.
Well, the council did it. I just
Well, thanks for
Started the ball rolling.
starting it. Okay. Well, thank you.
very much.
So ordinance number 987, you'll notice that I'm requesting a suspension of the rules to have all three readings and adopting an emergency clause. But let me tell you a little bit about what this ordinance is. For the longest period of time, over a year, I've looked at this ordinance and interpreted it such to prevent through traffic for trucks coming specifically down Country Club Parkway. So that when the interchange is opened, the idea is to prevent through trucks that are going from that interchange to Maumelle Boulevard to come down what is, in my opinion, a residential street. And so the idea was to sort of just direct them down Counts Massey where they could get to the boulevard just as easy. This, and all through traffic ordinances don't prevent a vehicle from going to a location within that entity, just the ones traveling through. So if your destination is in that area, obviously you can go down that area until such time as we invent a teleporter. As I was looking at this again, more recently, just to make sure that our ducks were in a row before the interchange opening, it became a little bit less clear that this road was defined as a residential road, that Country Club Parkway was a residential road. So I reached out to the city attorney, and I think we both agreed that to err on the safe side to prevent that through traffic, this was in order. So did you have an opinion on, I guess, did you have a comment?
Sure.
To make a.
Yeah, just to clarify, there are other places in the code where residential street is used sort of as a term of art, and it is more synonymous with like a local street. So because there are some different places where different wording is used, I just wanted to make it abundantly clear that it included all of these different categories.
Right, yeah, so with that, I'm not a fan of suspending the rules and emergency clauses. If I was dotting my I's and crossing my T's several months ago, I would have caught this possible issue, but here we are. And so I'd rather present it to the council as a way that when the interchange opens on day one, which is expected to open in less than a month, that we were able to protect the residents as much as possible. So with that, I'll open the floor to discussion. Councilmember Mosley.
I think this is an excellent idea. It will alleviate a lot of the concern of the Country Club of Arkansas residents. They've been worried about four-laning the parkway and that sort of thing, and worried about truck traffic, and just worried about large volumes of traffic racing through there. And I think this is an excellent idea. It's very appropriate. And I'll certainly support the emergency clause and the three readings and all that stuff tonight.
Councilmember Gardner.
I don't know what to say. No, I'm all for this as well. I appreciate the way this is kind of clearing up what a residential street is. My only question is, since I don't drive a truck for a living, I don't notice those signs until I thought about it today that you see no truck route, or you see a truck route and it's diverting you off. My question is, how is this enforced? Is it enforced? Is there like a master map that truck drivers use that routes them through the correct way? It's just more of an enforcement question.
I can't speak to, maybe there's a trucker, former trucker, or someone in logistics, but I think that they actually tend to be pretty decent at following the rules, because those points for getting tickets go on their license, which is their livelihood. I think there's some natural dissuasion, if that makes sense.
The state also specifies truck routes. So if the state, for some reason, were to determine that there wasn't adequate access for trucks to be able to go a certain place, they can designate a truck route through a city, and then they take over maintenance of that street that's designated as a state truck route. I looked into this, as you can tell, quite a bit for this ordinance. But for this purpose, I think that we would just put signs up that say no through trucks. And then they would have the other option of going down Counts Massey.
So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules and have all three readings today.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion on that matter? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Madam City Clerk Treasurer, could you please read ordinance number 987 2 more times?
Forgot about that. Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 987, an ordinance amending Section 82-223 of the Maumelle City Code to prohibit through truck traffic on certain city streets and for other purposes. Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 987, an ordinance amending Section 82-223 of the Maumelle City Code to prohibit through truck traffic on certain city streets and for other purposes.
This time, I'd entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 987.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders?
Yes.
Councilmember Scott?
Yes.
Councilmember Gartner?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney?
Yes.
Councilmember Holt?
Yes.
With that, motion carries. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the emergency clause for the reasons stated in Section 5.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that matter? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes.
Councilmember Holt?
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney?
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders?
Yes.
Councilmember Scott?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Councilmember Gartner?
Yes.
Threw us off there.
We're all looking around like, wait.
Making sure everyone's paying attention.
Wow.
Motion passes.
With that, we will move on to Resolution 2019-28, amending the 2019 street fund budget. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2019-28, a resolution to amend the 2019 street fund budget.
All right, so this is related to the adaptive traffic signal control. The city has its match, North Little Rock has its match, and the county has its match. We recently received a check for $36,679.06 from Pulaski County, and a check for $91,459.46 from North Little Rock. Both of those entities opted to just pay their match up front. We've received that money into the street fund balance, and now I'm requesting that the city council appropriate that money to be spent on that project. What that'll allow us to do is actually make our payments on time because we're paying then the whole amount and then requesting reimbursement from the state. So doing this just gives us $128,000 of extra room while we're waiting for reimbursements.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 2019-28.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion second. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. So just to reiterate, at the end of the day, it zeroes out, if that makes sense. All right, next order of business is Resolution 2019-29, a resolution to amend the 2019 general fund budget.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, Pulaski County, Arkansas, Resolution Number 2019-29, a resolution to amend the 2019 Maumelle General Fund budget.
All right. For those who have been around on the city council for a number of years may recall a time in maybe 2014 or so when Ms. Tasha Thompson, the former director of finance, came to the city council during budget time to request a restructuring of that department. And I mention that to preface that this is not a new idea. At the time, the council, I was either on the council or the city attorney, we said, well, we can wait on that. We know we've been a bit behind on the audits. I had believed, and still to a certain extent do believe, that we've been catching up, but in some ways we're very behind. I had, what this resolution does is look at a little bit of a restructure in that department. For those that know me, knowing that I'm asking in October to amend the budget to add a new person, know that that should mean that I take it pretty seriously. Essentially, what we're looking to do is add a new accountant position. We have rotated the person that is currently the accountant into basically a bookkeeper position. And then we're looking to sort of bump up on the pay grade what is our accounts payable or accounts receivable coordinator into a bookkeeper position. We had an employee who's in that position who's taken a better job. What we're finding is that to get the caliber of people we want, they're either short-term or they don't stick around. And so we're looking at essentially moving up that accounts payable, accounts receivable coordinator position up, adding an accountant, and then rotating the current accountant over. What we also have going on right now is, after discussion with our auditors, we have brought in, and we have been using periodically for several years now, Ms. Tasha Thompson to come in to help with the in preparation for the audit. We've been doing that a little bit recently, but have determined that just with her full-time job and her availability, that we weren't getting enough work done in that department. And so we've brought in a temporary employee, accountant, who is currently helping us with reconciling the bank accounts. So ultimately, while this number is relatively small, I did want to point out that ultimately we're adding another person, and then we're bumping up the pay grade of what is soon to be a vacant position. And so that's where I'm at. Councilmember Scott?
Didn't Ms. Vega eliminate a position when our billing changed? So didn't we have that as a positive to the finances of that
Yes,
department?
that is correct. So, and maybe Ms. Vega can hop up here in a minute. So she came to me 2 months ago, maybe, and asking for, at that time, another person, to which I said, didn't we just reduce and eliminate, downsize, because we were no longer handling the billing for our sanitation and the community service fee. And so I was very hesitant to do that. And I think I've asked her the question 1,000 times, like, why would you downsize and then later come in and add? And she has said, well, at that time, she was, I'd rather you just answer it than me try and paraphrase, if you don't mind.
Answer it than you too.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so when we eliminated that position, all that position did was billing for sanitation. That's all they did. They didn't participate in any other functions in the accounting department, so I didn't need that person. What's actually happened is the city has grown. We've added new services. For instance, all the departments now accept credit cards and have online, or about to have online, offerings to sign up for classes, to buy memberships, and that sort of thing. Well, it sounds like that's not a big deal, and it's not the only reason, but just adding that function adds a tremendous amount of reconciliation that we don't currently have. It's things like that that the department has grown. As the other departments grow, our department gets taxed with all the additional reconciliation, all the additional transactions, and it just takes more time.
And so to add to that, I have also added some, or really I'd like to say put back onto finance some duties that I think belonged there to begin with. I don't think that I, as the mayor, should be keeping up with all the bond monies and requisitions and creating my own spreadsheet separate and apart from what's in accounting. I've started pushing that to Shannon. I've also been asking her to help more with the idea is to do a better job planning financially than simply processing payments. And so more of what I like to think of as financial director duties onto her. That I don't think that's a monumental amount, but I think that it has helped contribute to this.
Yeah, and we've also got two new software systems that are in the process of being implemented, and that takes a tremendous amount of time. It's actually my favorite part of the job right now, but I can answer any questions.
Did that answer your question,
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
We have benefited from the lack of that position for this period of time this year.
So that is also one of the goals in doing away, rather than just moving up the accounts payable coordinator, moving that position up a pay grade, switching it to bookkeeper. We literally had someone whose job title said accounts payable coordinator, and then someone who said accounts receivable coordinator. And for those that remember the infamous email from Ms. Vega's predecessor, there were often issues about whose job it was to do what, and no, I'm the accounts payable, so I don't need to be doing receivable, or vice versa. And so by moving them into a more generic bookkeeper position, it does afford a little more flexibility to the department head to assign those duties appropriately. Councilmember Gardner?
The 7,500 here that you have for an increase in finance salaries, is that for the months of, I'm assuming, November, December, maybe part of October? And I guess my question is, what is the total annual increase to add this position?
Do you recall what the salary was for?
The salary that I'm asking for a budget of 45,000, but I want to hire somebody at 42. They've got to have an accounting degree. They've got to have experience. It's a general ledger accountant is what I'm hiring.
I'm not finding quick enough the specific numbers. But I want to say only 500 or 750 of that 7,500 is related to the reclassification of the AP coordinator to bookkeeper.
Okay.
And then the
That's
rest of it is
correct.
would
That's
be a
the main
new
thing
salary.
I was wondering,
Yeah.
was what the new cost would be. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Mosley?
We currently do have an accounts payable person, is that correct?
We do, but she resigned last week.
Okay,
So she's here, but
She's here. Her last day will be Friday.
okay. So the position that was eliminated was, I can't even remember now. What was the position that was eliminated?
Utility billing.
Utility billing, okay. So we got an accounts payable. We're going to bring on a new account position, and we're taking, now is the person that's in the current accounting position, are they going to go to a bookkeeper position?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that, will that come with a reduction in salary and that sort of thing?
No.
No?
it would
But
put that person slightly above max for that pay grade. And my recommendation is to not, this is not an individual who's done a bad job, and is an individual who's tremendously valuable to the city, but maybe more so valuable as in a bookkeeper position than in a accountant position. And so my recommendation would be that that person is just, and it happens from time to time, my recommendation would be that that position simply be maxed out, and that that person not receive a demotion per se.
Okay. I would suggest that, I don't know if you all use temporary agencies to where you could hire somebody through an agency, make sure they're gonna work out before hire them and that sort of.
Well, to hire the person that we have temping right now, I've got to pay 50% of his salary to hire him. And I don't think that's,
Well, that's up to your judgments then, I guess, but it just.
As
sounded
far,
like
yeah,
a
so, to back up the individual that's now a bookkeeper that was an accountant's been with the city
20 years.
20 years, and just gradually at some point in time, we think was, moved from, or put into another position. And one of the things we're trying to do is just be more competitive with the salaries that we pay. This position, the AP coordinator to bookkeeper, is an adjustment that likely would have come to the city council as part of the program that Councilmember Holt has been talking about, which is trying to get our salaries more competitive. My ask is early, just because of the very serious position that I think we're in that department.
Yeah, I think some help's needed, and I know both the mayor's trying to get a handle on the accounting department, so there's no blame there. Sounds like there's still some getting used to the accounting department here. How long have you been on board now? 2 years?
2 years.
2 years. Still trying to figure some of that out. I assume this has something to do with keeping bank account reconciliations up to date, and that we're possibly behind by almost 2 years. Is that correct?
No, we were behind when I came on, and as we were doing those audits, we're still struggling.
Yeah, we still have to do 2018 and 2019.
On 2 accounts, yes.
Okay, we've got 30 accounts.
We have 43 accounts.
43, and there's only 2 accounts that have to be brought all. Are they difficult accounts? Which
Yes,
ones
they're
are
very
they?
difficult.
Which ones are they?
The investment account and the general fund.
In the general fund. Okay. So those are fairly complex then.
They're very complex.
Are you capable of doing them or overseeing them? Or?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
It takes a lot of time, and it needs someone to
So
focus.
like a day to reconcile one of those.
It takes more than a day.
More than a day for a month to reconcile 1 month.
Yes,
It's quite amazing.
it is.
Well, I'm going to defer to the mayor's judgment on this, and I'll probably go.
So another issue, just to one of the things that I picked up from the Financial Oversight Committee when they brought the auditor and Mr. Kraft came in and talked about, and how we can prevent ending up in a situation like we were in a few years ago, was having that strong second. He mentioned that individual who, if your finance director takes a vacation or heaven forbid something worse happens, that strong second, that right-hand person can provide a continuity of sort of service and fill up either into the director's position or to be a strong right hand to the new person coming in. And that's what we're looking at trying to get, is that second, if you will, that person who can be the either the next in line or the right hand. Councilmember Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. I do remember this coming up in the past. It seems like a long time ago now. We're adding a person and increasing salaries, and when we do that, it's not like a one-time expense. We're going to live with that from now on. And in most cases, in the time that I've been here, we try to add employees when we can during the budget process, where we have
Understand.
opportunity to look at the whole picture rather than just, you know, I really didn't understand this picture until just now, and I've got to make a spur-of-the-moment decision. And so I'm just wondering if we wouldn't be better off, we're going into budget meetings this month, and I'm not against this. Huh?
I said hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah, 17th. I wonder if it just wouldn't be better if we put this off and you include it in your budget so that we can look at the whole picture. You know, I'm not saying no, it's a bad idea.
I understand.
And to add on to that, Councilmember Saunders, I think I've been telling Ms. Vega that for months, and it wasn't until I had to sit down with the auditors and Ms. Vega was there and Tina, and we all started talking that I eventually switched a little bit. It's a very reasonable position that you're in, and it's the position I've held for months until this point. Councilmember Gardner.
Ms. Vega, how many, you have two other employees or two other spots in your department currently besides yourself?
Yes.
Is that right? So there's 3 total, and this will take it up to 4 total? Is that-
Yes.
Okay.
And that's still below what the department has had in the past. I think it's more warranted now.
Right.
But I wasn't here then.
You know, I'm kind of of the same opinion. I don't necessarily like a mid-year budget resolution, but in this case, while other departments have grown, your department has grown in staff, or your department has not. And just understanding all of the onboarding that you all are having to do with the new budget system and everything else, I can see a little frustration with how much there is to do. I would be for this, but yeah, I know you've got a lot on your plate. So
Amusingly, not last week because I was out the week before. At the beginning of the week, I went to Shannon and said, "Okay, you can't do anything except work on onboarding with OpenGov. We need that software up and running so that we can get the budget back end numbers from the departments are mostly there, but get it into that system." And then I think I left the room, and a couple minutes later I came back and said, "And I can't have you doing anything else except working on the audit right now. You don't have time to do anything else." And she's like, "Well, which one?" I'm like, "Both. Make it happen." But
one other thing I guess I'll add, we've kind of skipped over the 12.5 for contract. Is that going to be helpful to you to get caught up with the things that are going on? And that's just, will that just be
Yes.
for 2019? Do you need any?
But I prefer to have train one person
Sure.
and
So you wouldn't necessarily even need the contract labor as long if you had a full-time person that you could bring on?
I believe so.
I believe the contract with the accounting firm, we have required a 1 month minimum. So this includes the 1 month.
Okay.
And that person is here, and if the council denies this, we're still okay. We just not bring in that new person. So, Councilmember Holt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My normal pessimistic attitude, in opposition to the gentleman, is always an optimist. Normally, I would be decline or say no here, or inclined to vote no. I had an opportunity to vote with Ms. Vega before the meeting, and as you gabbled us to make us hush, and she explained to me that, number one, she has lost a very, very valuable employee. Am I correct on that?
Yes, sir.
And so not only does that have to be replaced quickly, she cannot afford to get behind at all. We've already been through this trauma. I'm sure her department is one of several that's probably going to need to get updated and improved. So we may be facing others as well. But as she explained, the position that she's looking for is someone that's not just bringing in some help. It's somebody that brings in ability to really put us back into position the way we need to be. We just attended a few days ago the Finance 101 sponsored by the Municipal League, and they had an additional thought about us having a tech person to prevent us from being hacked or whatever you call it by someone else. But anyway, I would normally say, let me ask you a question I don't think I did a while ago. If we were to wait until we got to budget, we start budget in 10 days.
I understand.
How difficult, is there a deadline that you're facing to where you really, is that going to put you in a critical position if we were to wait until budget, or if we need to do it now, we need to do it now? I mean, so I'm not going to say no on that, but between you and the mayor, what is y'all's, where do we stand?
I've been asking for the position for several months, and we didn't want to come to y'all mid-year like this. We take it very, very seriously. I'm trying to get the audit to the auditor so that they can do their deal and get the audit before the end of 2019, so that we can move forward.
Well, I know you're sincere. Your request is absolutely, you wouldn't say it if we didn't need it. I don't think I could turn it down. If it comes to a vote, I'll vote yes to go on and get this done. We need to get it done for the good of the city. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, the bank reconciliations was something that was mentioned by John Kraft in their audit. In fact, it was a finding, I think, on the management letter, and that's a pretty significant thing.
It is.
And said we need to get that straightened around, and it sounds like we're still struggling in that regard, and I'm disappointed in that.
I'm very disappointed in it
And
too.
I don't know exactly where the problem is exactly, because I'm not lurking here every day, but there's something still.
The bank recs have been reconciled within the month. They have not been reconciled month to month.
Whatever it's, I don't understand that exactly, but it's apparently we're still, Mr. Kraft may have a problem with it again this time, as from.
Yes, he does.
I absolutely expect a finding on bank
So
reconciliation.
we've got a problem, and that's, and I think the mayor is trying to tell us tonight that the best way to kind of get this stuff squared away again is to go with this plan. And so I'm going to go with that plan, but I'm definitely with Alderman Holt that I don't like to do mid-year budget things, but I think we need to shore up this accounting thing, and I certainly hope that we can do better in the future.
Yes, sir.
And kind of keep things, good oversight to make sure things are being done correctly.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Tierney?
So you already have a candidate in mind for this job?
No. This temp seems to be, he has caught on really, really good. And he's asking all the right questions, so I have high hopes for him. But, I mean, to get him is going to be very expensive.
Gotcha. So is there a potential that this would be the person, or you're probably going to have to start a search?
I intend to start a search. Because, I mean, we could be it's half a year's salary that we have to pay to hire this guy.
Okay.
That's a lot of money.
That's if the salary is $40,000, we pay $20,000 to the temp agency.
Temp agencies are very expensive, yeah. So this would enable you to start searching for the person and possibly save us some money, opposed to paying for the temp.
Yes.
So this could actually be a saver. of money.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yes.
Thanks.
Councilmember Scott?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 2019-29.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Is there any further discussion on that matter? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys, very, very much.
Thank you for the good work you do.
Next order of business is Resolution 2019-30, expressing a willingness to utilize grant funding. Madam City Clerk Treasurer, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, Resolution Number 2019-30, a resolution authorizing the city's acceptance of flood mitigation assistance grant and for other purposes.
So as I brought up, I want to say at the last meeting, the good news is, yay, we were approved for the grant to address the drainage issues in North Maumelle area. The downside is that that comes with our 25% of that, which comes to, or we believe will come to, $1,013,815. I want to say on Wednesday I've got a meeting with people to enter into an agreement, basically accepting that. At some point in time, if the council decides that we are going to go forward, there will be either a budget resolution, or I think the timeline will be such that we can build it into the budget during its normal time frame. But I didn't want to start that process if this is going to end up like the roundabout where we go down a path and then back out, which makes it sound more negative than I mean it to be. But so if there are any questions about this, I'd be happy to answer them. This, again, is one of those things that I think is necessary. I'm thrilled that we got the grant. I'm not thrilled at paying for it. It's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. Councilmember Gardner.
This does not, like you just mentioned, this doesn't have a budget resolution attached to it, so we are not approving funding anything tonight.
Correct.
But if we approve this resolution, does that basically put us on the hook to then go forward and approve a budget resolution? Or put it into the budget for a future year?
At that point in time, it authorizes me to enter into this memorandum of understanding where I'm saying that the city will pay that money. Maybe the city attorney can answer it. I don't think that it can bind the council's future appropriation, but I think people will begin to rely on the city council's position that we are going forward with this.
I mean, so it is authorizing the memorandum of understanding. So I don't know that it spells out the details of everything we're going to spend the money on and exactly, every item we're going to purchase or anything like that, but it is committing, the mayor, giving the mayor authority to commit that the city is going to provide the matching funds.
And one of the things that I noticed, it did appear that we could have other contributions from within the city. So are there other grants or things that we could go after to alleviate our cost on the million? I didn't know if grants can build on top of each other.
I don't know what grants, that's a good question. I don't know what grants that would be. There was a question last time about in-kind contributions. We can meet our match with in-kind contributions. I haven't really dug into the plans to see, nor would I necessarily be the right person to do that, to see how much of this we could handle with our crews. There will be some things that we can handle. I don't know that we'll be able to handle $1 million worth of it.
Right.
With in-kind. And I don't know, I'd be more than happy to apply for grants. I don't know what grants. So there's a lot of grants that we can go after, but they have to be, if it's federal money, it has to specifically allow us to use that money for the city's match.
I just noticed here in section 9 that the non-federal match that we come up with can't be met with funds from other federal agencies. So, so I guess that blocks us out on some of those things. Okay. And then you said you had a meeting Wednesday. Do we have assuming it's not approved tonight, do you have a timeline of when this would need to be approved by so that we don't lose out on this chance for $3 million?
I don't know that I have what that time frame is. In fact, I know that I don't have what that time frame is.
I don't know that I've seen what this project would even involve. I'm not sure of even the issue. I mean, it's apparently a box culvert that can't handle all the volume. I mean, I don't even know what the...
Oh, boy. There is a... John, were you raising your hand there? Jump in and help me out here, Mr. Todd. Please say your name and address.
John Todd, 145 Orleans. I'm a planning commissioner, and I attend almost every engineers meeting for the last 3 years. what is happening is up in the north end. Do y'all remember the two floods? I think one was in 2005 and 2008, where we had not only single-family residences, but we also had multifamily residents. And luckily, it didn't get up into the fire station or the police station. All the water goes down through there, and it goes through two 10-foot pipes. And you would think that that's enough. But not only is it draining all of Rolling Oaks and all that item west of there, it's also draining everything that's on this side of the railroad track spur that goes all the way to what is now Dillard's. All of that industrial area goes through there, and it's in such a format where you've got this water bucking this water, so it doesn't have the energy to go through the 10-foot pipes. The design of this is placing culverts upstream from this one section, which is closer to Champs Boulevard, that allows it to get over to the other side of the railroad track spur and then down into Johnson Creek and on down towards Zajac Road. So that's what the issue is right there when we have these large events, which we seem to be having in a more rapid occurrence. I mean, we've had like 400- 500-year events in the last 15 years. So that's the issue right there, is the waters are bucking each other, and because of that, they're not going under through the two 10-foot pipes, and in some instances, that's not enough capacity. So this will allow a deferral of some of that water coming from, I guess that would be the south side, and get under there, and then the two 10-foot pipes would have less pressure on them, and they can drain. But all we need is another 500-year event, and you ought to be well aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mosley?
Did we have flooding problems before that overpass went in that narrowed all that? Do we know that?
Way before my time. I've had people say that I've had people complain that overpass caused the problem. I'm not sure if it's that or if it's just the capacity and the severity of the storms we've had lately. I don't have a good answer for that because I
guess one of my questions is the city, are we really to blame for all this flooding that's taken place, or are the folks that built in those areas, are they the one to be blamed? I mean,
I don't have.
We don't
I know that the city is the one who has the options at this point.
Okay, we have an option to fix it, and so we think that that's what we should be doing, no matter what the blame was or what caused it. That's kind of where we are, is that right?
Yeah, I can't speak to whose fault it was that we're here, or if there's anyone's fault, or if it's Al Gore's global warming, or I don't know. I don't know what it is. I just know that when we look at what we think the issue is, that this is the solution. But this is a grant we applied for in 16 and we're denied. I'm not sure if we applied in 15, but we applied. This is the 2017 grant process.
From my perspective on all this, I feel like we probably should take advantage of this.
I think that if we do not, the likelihood of being approved for this grant for the same project down the line is very low.
Now, is that $1 million that we're going to be matching, could it be more?
I suppose if the project end up costing more,
like an overrun or something.
That's what it says, number 2
Yeah.
of the MOU.
yeah. So it depends on overruns and.
So that all comes back on us then.
Yes. It could be less, but.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Scott.
Well, I think overruns could be handled by the in-kind work. So if we approve the full budget amount, then the in-kind work could offset any potential overruns. Secondly, I think it's our responsibility to take care of our citizens. These people flood, it ruins their homes. In some cases, it just totally ruins their lives. This is a bargain If we had to do this ourselves, we'd be spending that $4 million for those people, and it's impacting a greater and greater area each time we have an event. I just can't support this strongly enough, in my opinion. Full of them. My opinion, I'm full of them.
Thank you. Councilmember Tierney?
Do we have a plan in place on how to do this? I mean, is this something we've already, got a project or a plan or know how we're gonna resolve this? Do we have a solution?
Yes. Do we have plans? There was a certain detail of plans that were submitted as part of the application process. I may have mentioned this, the review process for getting approval of this is really interesting. I may have pointed out that even some of the buffer zones where we're taking some of the pipes impact the buffer zone of one of the Trail for Tears. So we've had to get tribal authority for some of the funding on this to make sure that we have an archaeologist out there to make sure that if there are any artifacts, that those are being properly preserved. That being said, it's not shovel ready at this point, right? The plans will be elaborated on further, and have been adapted, through the application process as FEMA was asking for information or there were concerns. So we have some pretty good designs, but they're not complete.
Okay, gotcha.
Councilmember Williams?
I was just gonna co-sign on what Council Member Scott said. I can't support this enough. It's just so imperative that we take care of our people up there, especially at the Gables, because she and I both have seen the flooding and the damage that it's done. And I agree, it would probably cost way more than $1 million to get it done. I'm no expert at that. I'm assuming that that's the case, but yes, I agree. I think this has to be done. We don't have a choice here.
When we look at this discussion has come up not all that recently, as a matter of fact, but it used to come up quite a bit. The difference between needs and wants. This is almost one of those things that I think we need, but I don't want it. If that makes sense. Like I don't, but I think we need it, and so that's where I'm at. I'm sure the folks that live there want it. But I do think we need it. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2019-30.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Folks in the north end of town, thank you. Resolutions 2019-31 approving a preliminary development plan for the Benson Park addition has been deferred, as has Resolution 2019-30 approving a preliminary development plan for Albright Commercial. Both of these are the items that are the proposed developments there on Country Club Parkway at the Country Club of Arkansas. And so we're not sure if they will be at the next council meeting or the next council meeting following the next planning commission meeting. Mr. Neri, do we know how long they're going to be deferred for at this point?
Jim Neri, Director of Planning and Zoning. What I know at this point is that they're going to be on the agenda for the Planning Commission at the end of October. I think the way the spacing goes, we might have time to get them on the next council meeting for the first Monday in November, if they so choose. Depending upon how the Planning Commission rules on these two variance requests, that could change the recommendation to the City Council. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know that yet. Nobody does. And I'd like to say this to the council, and I apologize. The reason these people are having to come back in the first place is because of me. This is my fault. I was sitting in my living room Sunday morning after the Planning Commission meeting having a cup of coffee when sometimes I do my very best thinking, and something popped into my head. It popped into my head because I remembered something Mike Watson said about 10 years ago. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go find that. On Monday, I found it. On Tuesday morning, I notified the representative of these applicants. The section is 70-132A4. That's subdivision regulations, a section of code I should be most familiar with inside, outside, in the dark with blindfolds on any time of the day, any day of the week. Most of the time I am. This one, I didn't. I've been over that section of code a million times. Didn't even dawn on me for these people. And I'll tell you what the hang-up is. They're in a zoning category called Planned Residential District. That's PRD. PRD will allow uses, commercial uses, out of C1. The section I quoted deals with driveway access to minor arterials or above those that are not permitted. A minor arterial is a Class 4 road on the Maumelle Master Street Plan. Though it's not a PRD zoning, the applicants propose to use uses out of C1. I didn't catch it. That's my fault. Blame me. Now, I've cost these people unnecessary money and time that they really didn't have to take and spend, and perhaps slowed up some developments that could bring good tax dollars to Maumelle. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. We'd like to get things done fast, but we'd like to get them done right more than we'd like to get them done fast. So those will be deferred. That concludes the new business, so you can rest a little bit. I wrote down Rock Region Metro, who provides buses out here, is going through a lot of changes, especially as Little Rock is looking at their budgets and their willingness to participate. We currently pay about $40,000 a year for our bus route. That route costs Rock Region Metro approximately $160,000 a year. They are looking into ways to either continue to fund that route or alternatives that may be provided. I imagine maybe by the next city council, there may be a request for us to pick up a larger portion than we currently pay. If not, I think they're looking at alternate methods of transportation other than simply a bus route. I just wanted to give y'all a heads up on that so that it isn't a shock down the road. I'm not sure that it wouldn't be cheaper to buy a few people cars than continue the bus route, but we do have some numbers and information. I think they've asked me to come share the city's opinion on what we want to do with that route. And so I kind of want to open this up for just a moment as to at least to take the council's temperature on trying to keep that route at a significant cost or willingness to explore other alternatives. Just free flow it. Councilmember Saunders.
Okay, Mayor. Thank you. You know, when we got into this several, I don't know, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years ago, I sat right here and fought it because I'd seen too many of these buses come in here empty and go out with one person, okay? Our buses that come here are terribly underutilized, and it's an awful lot of money. And I'm kind of like what the mayor said. I think we could probably buy them cars cheaper than this. So I would like to see us look at other alternatives. I'm not trying to be mean, but, you know, I'm just not sure that we're getting the bang for the buck. So I'd like to explore other options, whatever.
Madam City Attorney, thank you.
This is just a random question, but I happened to be going past one of the bus stop areas the other day and saw like a Metro vehicle that was like a Yukon or Suburban or something along those lines picking people up. Is that something they're exploring more? It seems like it'd be a lot more efficient.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
So, the director of Rock Region Metro,
sat through a couple of his presentations and talked to him some about this, and they're exploring, you kind of think of it as a Rock Region Metro Uber, in a sense, where it will, you have these defined routes that run through. Now, where did you see your particular instance? Where did you say it was?
On the way between my house and City Hall, so it was behind the apartments at.
Okay, from what, my understanding is they have certain routes, and Maumelle is not one of those routes, where if a person lives within a certain distance from one of their main lines, they can get on their app on their phone and hail a Metro Uber. They will come and pick them up and take them to the nearest stop. And it kind of serves that purpose. But from my understanding, that was not operating within the city of Maumelle.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Because they were trialing it actually in Southwest Little Rock, and they had not even rolled it out to
They're
the
looking
entire.
it's really interesting, but the disruptions to the transportation market, they've been looking at everything from the Metro Uber, if you will, to a shuttle service where maybe you reserve your, you call in your ride at a more particular time. There's a whole, and I don't know specifically what would replace our route, which is weird because it's not, it's an express route, and yeah, so.
Only runs a few times a day as well.
A few times a day, as well, yeah.
I'll say this, if we, am I jumping in?
No, please.
It's just one of those things where I think we'll have to see what the cost is, but if we ever lose that line, it's going to be difficult for it to come back, I would think. And as we're trying to grow, there is going to be, I hope, I'm the eternal optimist, Mr. Holt. I hope that there's a significant need for workforce in certain parts of our town. And the way that express route runs, it comes past here, heads to the north end of town, and then takes off back to downtown. I would hope that they would then work that in where they could stop off at the new interchange as well. But there is a percentage of the population that depends on that, and I fear that if we take it away, it will never come back. And when you're trying to recruit business and industry in, one of the things that they look at is, let's talk about public transportation. If we're going to bring our industry here, our business, how are our employees going to get to work? And they may ask these difficult questions that we can say, well, we used to have it, but it was underused at the time and we gave it up. So, but I will say this about Mr. Frazier, the director. He is being very open-minded and trying to find some creative solutions to help with this. And he's only been on the job, I think, since 2018, I believe is when he came and joined. But he is really thinking outside of the box.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Williams.
Well, my particular population in Little Rock relies heavily on the bus system. As a matter of fact, my contract requires that my facility be within a mile of a bus stop for our guys to use the bus. For them to come to Maumelle, that's just about the only way they can get here. And if they work in Maumelle, they have to find jobs that will coincide with when the bus comes, because I think it only comes in the morning and it comes in the afternoon, and their shifts may not work for that. So there a lot of times, like at DeWaffle Bakers or other places that I hire our guys heavily, they're not even able to ride the bus because of those certain times. So it's important to me personally that we have a bus line, not just for my guys, but for people who rely on for like employment. If we grow out by the third exit, or if we grow in here, we're going to have a bus line. And I do believe when it's gone, it's gone. And but $40,000 a year is an awful lot of money. I mean, I have to buy bus tickets all the time, and bus passes all the time. So I would love to see other options. I'd love to see, we've got to have one. We have to have options. So whatever that looks like, that's what we need. If it's not a bus route, whatever, it needs to be something that we can utilize.
Thank you. And just so to reiterate, some of the stops hit, well, not to reiterate, I didn't say it, but some of the stops hit North Little Rock, so they pay a portion. There's portions of where that route goes. Some of it's in the county. Mm-hmm. They're chipping in. But and we're chipping in $40,000. So I don't want to give the impression that it's $40,000 or we have to pay $160,000 thousand, but you are looking at possible increases of 2 or 3 times as much. Councilmember Scott? I don't remember who's next.
I think that this discussion is helpful, and it's good that the council is speaking about it, but I think that there needs to be more input from the community on this. The chamber isn't here. We've lost our audience this evening because it's such a long meeting. But I hope that this comes up again in a venue where business owners and the chamber and others can participate in the discussion as well.
I think it'll definitely come up again. I'm just supposed to go talk later this month on and give them the city's stance, which I told them I really don't feel comfortable doing. But council, it'll definitely come up more. And I'll show you some numbers of ridership, which will probably make everyone's jaw drop. Councilmember Tierney.
Well, as Councilmember Scott mentioned, I have had residents ask me for, more access to the bus here in Maumelle. And then also to tag on to what Councilmember Gardner said, as a businessman, both of my businesses in Little Rock and North Rock are located right by bus stops. Matter of fact, I've got a bus stop right in front of one of my stores, and I see a lot of traffic from those. So there's a large community. That's the only way they can get around, and so we don't want to abandon them. But it wouldn't hurt us to keep track of what other options we might have as well.
Councilmember Saunders.
Thank you again, Mayor.
You're very welcome.
Something that we should keep in mind, however, we are budgeting or dealing with Maumelle taxpayer money. Now, Maumelle taxpayers are probably not going to be utilizing the buses very much, and I have compassion for your people and others that do need them. But don't forget, for generations, Maumelle has been the highest per capita income city in Arkansas. We don't have a large class of people here that depend on that exclusively for transportation. And we are guardians of their money, not Little Rock's money, okay? So that's just a thought. And I'm not saying I'm against it or for it at this point, but I do think we should explore it. Because there are people, and the industry's important, so I understand all that.
City Attorney?
My husband sometimes rides the bus just because he doesn't like to drive to work. So he does, especially if like one of the vehicles has a problem and the other, the kids have to drive to school or whatever. So, there are people who maybe don't ordinarily always ride the bus, but they do when it's needed, and it's nice for it to be there. But more, I wanted to mention that, we do have a very affluent, city for the most part, but we also, I see people in courts that take the bus to get there. I see a lot of people who have suspended driver's license that I would really like for them to have another option because they end up in court because they keep driving. They're, the vision impaired population that can't drive. Our apartment residents that are, in subsidized housing and that kind of thing. I think I didn't realize how many people there were that didn't fall into that affluent category until I spent a number of months in this job. But it is an important segment of our population, and when we don't provide ways for them to be employable, it just results in more issues in our courts.
Are there any other bus-related comments? With that, I'll move on to striping. How many people have seen striping being done primarily on Odom, Murphy, Bringler, and Lake Point Drive? The project that took forever, but is now, if they're not finished today, they should be finished very soon.
Thank you, Mr.
Currently, the budget meeting is scheduled for the 17th at 6 p.m. The goal is to still proceed with that. It'll be in the council chambers. I will send out an email later this week confirming or canceling our onboarding rep or specialist with OpenGov, the budgeting software that we're using as of Friday, no longer works there. We think that we are sufficiently onboarded that it should be very smooth, but we were supposed to have a status meeting this morning. When he didn't show up, we sent him an email and got an auto response saying that he doesn't. So it's a little bit shakier now than it was at the start of the day, but I will let y'all know this week if we're going to have to cancel that one and postpone it, or if it's going forward. With that, Planning Commission report will be at the,
They had both meetings.
okay.
Yeah, well, there were three primary issues on the agenda. The first one was about a fellow who bought a house in the Osage area in 2007. There was a fence and a pool. The man went to sell his house, and it was discovered during a survey that the pool encroached in a utility easement that's not currently being used, but it's still a public utility easement. So he was seeking a variance to allow that pool to remain. What troubled me about this was that that pool had a permit issued for it. If we made a mistake to begin with by issuing that permit and allowing that pool to be built, or if we didn't inspect it during the process so that it got built and we didn't change it during that time, then all these years later, that new homeowner then is just sweating bullets because somebody's trying to buy his house, and the guy says, well, you mean they can come and tear up my pool and I have no recourse on that if they want to? And I just felt that was a terrible situation, and that the fight should not have been with the city. The city that should have just been a no-brainer. We issued the permit, we inspected it, everything was good. A new survey comes out, which it does all the time now because of satellite technology and that kind of thing. So anyway, the variance was granted, but I just thought that man had to go through something that he shouldn't have had to go through because of a city's mistake. The other two things that they talked about were these two developments in Country Club, and if you haven't paid much attention to those are two small retail developments right by where the old Country Club used to be, or where the Country Club building still is. Very nicely done, very, very nicely done. One was to have retail space and a restaurant. The other one was retail and office space. Very well done buildings. Would have really been, a good addition to our city. Jim Neri left, but he said that he always keeps tally of customer complaints, citizen complaints, and he said 14 members from Country Club were in favor of the development, 12 were against, and every single one of them were the same, against any additional traffic, and they don't want any commercial in their area. So it was 12 to 14, so it's fairly even. But if there's going to be a commercial development in an area that's primarily residential, I hope that it looks like the work and planning that has been done on these two. So, and meeting's over at 7:38.
Well, thank you. I want to point out that when we're approving permits for pools, we don't have surveyors that are out there verifying the locations of the pools, right? They're putting it on a map.
They're markers.
But we have to trust that the markers are in the right place. And so if those end up not being there, I understand, and there may be a solution, but I think that not too dissimilar to the individual that was in here a month ago or 2 months ago complaining about the location of the fence, and we're saying, well, you can put it at your property line. It's not we don't have anyone capable of telling them where their property line is. And so I get one solution of that could be to hire surveyors for those, or to change it. The variance code to almost automate the process or give it to a staff level if it's been approved. Or I think there are solutions because that is a frustrating position for a seller and home buyer to be in. Council Member Mosley?
Yes, I'd like to back up Ms. Scott completely on that deal. This gentleman was put through a tremendous process over something he had nothing to do with, and the pool had been issued a permit, and it was, to me, something that could have been caught in the inspection process. And I got the impression that perhaps the city may issue permits without actually inspecting. Is that the case?
What do you mean by inspecting?
By going out and doing some type of inspection, like if,
Survey pins.
yeah, survey pins or even something like a roof, do they go out and inspect the roof? Do they, if you get a permit to install a new air conditioner, do they go out and inspect that?
That is my understanding. I'm unaware of any permits that are not, we have, Mr. Carter is here. I'm unaware of any permits that are issued along those lines that we don't inspect. The banner permit maybe, that my,
No, Trent Carter, the Director of the Department of Permits and Building. Mr. Mosley, any work that's done is inspected. The pool situation, what you're referring to, happened in 2001 prior to a department that was split from planning and zoning, had all the inspectors, all the building codes that were enforced at the time. So a lot of that happened prior to a department of planning and permits being separate from one another. And so that's probably where it failed. Now, when a situation comes up with a pool contractor comes in for a permit, they do have a survey when they fill out the application, and they mark on that survey where it's going to go. We indicate on there how far between any setbacks or property lines where they have to be, where they are required. So we don't know by way of a survey, though, if it's accurate or how far it is away from the setback. We're just doing inspections for particularly the electrical and any mechanical kind of things that may have to go into that pool. We're not inspecting where that layout is. We hope we catch it at the front end and that the contractor knows to go measure those distances. We don't actually go out and measure the distance ourselves because we don't have the time to do it.
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. But anyway, I wanted to say that is a problem. I just don't think in a lot of cases homeowners should have to do that. If something was inspected years ago, it's something I'll keep thinking about, see if there's some way we can rectify that. I would like to say something on Mr. Nary's behalf. Those two projects, very complicated, a lot of things involved, a lot of detail. And I know Mr. Nary had a whole lot on his plate the last couple of months. He was in the hospital. Yeah, and I wasn't going to say that, but he was. And so I think he beat himself up way too much tonight. And if he's still around, I'd pat him on the back. So, but anyway, that's all I've got. Thanks.
Madam City Attorney?
I did just want to say one thing about the variance and the permitting process. And I agree with what you're saying, but also the plats that are filed on record with the county have certain recorded easements marked on them. And those easements are not rights that the city has to just give away. I mean, they're utility and drainage easements, and so the city the drainage portion of that, it might be a city right, but the utilities have the right to those easements on that property. So it is incumbent upon the contractor to measure and to review the recorded plat. They're on notice of where those easements are, and if they don't measure correctly and they build within the easement, the city can't take away an easement right that's granted to the utility.
Thank you. Next up is council member comments. Councilmember Gardner.
I'm going to be quick, hopefully. You beat me to the punch. I was going to compliment you and Director Hogan. Odom looks fantastic. And you don't realize, I've said this before, I think, you kind of, when you live in your own home, you get used to your own dirt. And when you're driving down Odom now, it looks like a street, and you forgot that there were actually lines there, and it looks fantastic. I drove around just at night just to check out all the lines. It looks great. Secondly, I received several calls and emails the last part of last week and this weekend about the private street signs that have gone up in Majestic Point. A lot of apparently the entire subdivision of Majestic Point has not been dedicated. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the homeowners that live in that entire neighborhood did not realize they were living on private streets instead of public streets. And so that caught them off guard. And they came to me asking what needs to be done for that developer to dedicate those streets. And so I'd emailed the city attorney and Mr. Mayor this morning, just asking if they could let us know what is required, because those homeowners, that's a lot of homes up there with more to come. And so it affects their property values if it's a private street, because they don't know who's responsible for upkeep. So.
Absolutely. Majestic Point was one of the primary reasons that I ran that ordinance requiring the signs, because not only are there some, I think a fair number of homeowners in that area who do know, because I've talked to them from the other perspective, but there's, I think, even more lots that aren't developed with people who haven't bought and built, who we want to know as soon as possible. Some of the things that I don't have that list handy. There's a relatively short punch list. However, at least one of those things on there is quite substantive, and that's the sidewalks and walking paths, trails, a few little drainage issues and whatnot. What has happened is over time, they were given an original, and this is my understanding, Scott, you can correct me when I'm wrong. The punch list started, and it took them so long to get to that punch list that by the time they got to the end, they had acquired some more now deficiencies. And of course, the road is normally built, and everything is built up, bonds issued at that point, maintenance bonds, and then the city accepts it by dedication. I think at that point in time, we were still passing the ordinance at the time of acceptance, as opposed to what we do now, which is conditionally accept them contingent upon them satisfying certain criteria. And we've been working with those developers to get some of those things done. Now we don't actually start, a lot of the things that weren't done, we would never have given sort of building permits to begin with now. We would have caught that before. So we're stopping that from happening in the newer subdivisions. I was talking with the city attorney a little while back about drafting an ordinance that prohibits the last number of lots, X percentage of lots, from being sold until such time as, all of their obligations were met. Come to find out, we do have one that says, I think the last 10% of the lots can't be.
Yeah, I wanted to mention there are a couple that we've been looking at and that I spoke to Mr. Carter about today, enforcing it. One is the last 10% in a subdivision. Those building permits are not to be issued for the last 10% of the lots until all of the public improvements have been completed. And then also, building permits are not to be permitted adjacent to sidewalks or walk paths that are required and have not been built. So we are looking at those enforcement mechanisms in the code and implementing those.
That was part of my question. I wondered if there was a way to limit what they could do until it was corrected. But then on the other flip side, if you're trying to sell lots to bring in the money that you need to finish the sidewalks or whatever, that's something to be considered too.
And this is what's referenced, that, they want them to be allowed to build a certain percentage of lots to help pay for those improvements. But I mean, a substantial number of lots have been built out on. So we're a little probably past that point for that.
Do we know how close we are to that 10%?
Oh, what is the build out? Is probably 50%. I mean, I don't know, but there's still, I think, a lot of leeway. A lot of it's apparent. The rights of way have to be. You can, if you just drive up there, you can see it doesn't look like the other subdivisions. It's overgrown a lot of different areas. But I can work on trying to get you a more specific punch list. So
I appreciate the information.
Councilmember Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions. One is kind of dated. We had Resolution 2019-28 dealing with the traffic control system, the adaptive control system. You mentioned that it's a wash because we just transferred money from the general fund into the traffic, or the street fund, and we're going to be reimbursed that money. Now, when we're reimbursed, will that money go back into the general fund?
Well, so as I'm looking at it, it's You're talking about Resolution 2019-28 is actually street fund. There's no general fund. Looking at the agenda, it does.
Oh, we're just transferring it within the street fund.
So this is, we received 2 checks from 2 different cities, or the city and county, and all we're saying is now that we've got that check, we want to be able to spend that money.
Okay.
Since we're fronting the money for the other cities.
Well, that was just a curious question. So, the second, can I get you to speak briefly about what's going on at the new fire substation?
I think I can. If you're asking about the current empty status of that building, there has been detected mold in the living quarters. It's not funny. I just someone laughed and made me laugh. Mold, and so we have removed the personnel from there and located them at Station 1 currently. I believe we're looking at trying to locate a camper, RV, something along those lines, Chief. Why don't you come?
So anyway, where we're at right now, I actually looked at putting an office building that could have some bedrooms in it in one of the bays. Because the bays aren't the problem, it's the living quarters and actually the bedrooms where we have the mold spores that are actually pouring in on top of the guys while they're sleeping in there. So I looked at an office building to move in there. First look at it, $500 a month. I was like, okay, we can handle that. Then the moving fee came in and it was over $9,000, and I said, we can't do that. So right now, we have the state coming out on Wednesday to meet with us down there, and they're going to kind of give an opinion on what they think the problem actually is down there. But we have the refrigerant lines for the AC that actually cools one small room with all of our electronic equipment and everything in it. That's just massive condensation. It's saturated the insulation that is wrapped around that. It's leaking onto the ceiling tiles, onto the sheetrock, and we have, you know, big time mold in there. Like normal is 1,200, we're getting 56,000 pouring into the bedrooms where the guys sleep. So right now we're not there. I mean, we're at Station 1, but no, you know, I don't like it. I met with the contractor and the architect last Tuesday, and their big concern was, you know, since day one, the building has leaked out in the bay. And they've been there, the roofers have been there probably 12 or 14 times. So they wanted to concentrate on the leaky roof, and I said, you know, let me interject here. Our citizens paid over $2 million for this station so we could respond to their needs in a timely manner. That's my concern. Not that I'm not concerned about the leaks in the roof, I'm still concerned about that, but right now I have a mold issue in the station, so my guys can't reside here, which means we can't provide the protection to the citizens that we want to give. And we spent a lot of money on this. And they said, well, we understand your frustration. And I said, I don't think you really do. I mean, it's very frustrating to me. I said, we can all agree this building hasn't been right since day one. So we're working on it. We're trying to get us back down there. I don't like it any better than anybody else that we're all in one station right now. But we're doing the best we can, and you know, we're responding in kind. It just may take us a couple more minutes, 3 minutes longer than normal to get to you, and in some places even longer than that. But
is that going to affect our ISO rating?
I mean, I'm hoping it's a very temporary thing. But right now, there's just a whole lot of finger pointing going on as to what the actual cause is. That's why we're getting the state's coming in and going to kind of do an independent analysis to kind of let us know what they think the real problem is. So we're kind of looking at it from that angle. But
well, you know a lot more about this than I do, but in the ISO ratings, you turn in your information to be evaluated once a year or something?
Well, they're doing it about once every 3 years now, so we should be in line here before. Yeah, we've got some time. I mean, one of the guys actually asked me today, Chief, are we going to be back in that by Christmas? We better be back in that by Christmas, or I'm going to be extremely upset at somebody. But you know, I'm already extremely upset that we even had to get out of there. But you know, from a safety standpoint, I just couldn't leave them in there. I mean, we were basically dumping poison into their bedrooms. So,
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, this is one of the wildest things I've heard. My wife actually asked me yesterday, she said, what about the mold in the new fire station? I said, no, somebody's got that wrong on Facebook. It was the old fire station.
no.
I guess we really got it.
There was a black mold issue in the old fire station, but now there's a black mold issue in the new station.
Mold, is it in the air conditioning and all that?
Yeah. It's actually the proper technical term is asparagus penicillin mold spores is what is actually dumping into the bedrooms, but it's an extremely high rate.
It's in the vents and all that stuff.
Right. Right. So not a good situation. We're trying to get on top of it, and we're, you know, exploring all avenues, trying to get it in. You know, it's still not out of the question if we can find somebody that's what I would consider reasonable. You know, $500 a month. I thought, okay, well, that's not bad. And then they came in with, well, this is what it's going to take for the moving and setup fee, and I went, that is bad. I mean, you wanted to charge me $8,600 to set it up.
I'm hoping that maybe we can go against whoever built all this at some point.
There's already been one engineer from the architect. They've sent a mechanical engineer to do an evaluation that's done in a report. We're still, you know, the contractor says it's a design problem, and the architect says it's an execution problem. So we've got to find out. We've got to find out what the problem is. That's imperative. And until then, it's hard to make anybody pay for it when we're all arguing over why it's happening.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you for asking that question, Alderman Saunders.
Anybody else have anything?
Councilmember Gardner?
You know, you said $8,600 is a lot of money, and it is. But we built Station 2 in that spot for a reason, and that was for response time.
Right.
I'm sure it is severely, you know, for my neighborhood on the far eastern end of town, and I can only imagine for Country Club on that other end, how long of a response time is, and a matter of a couple of minutes means a lot for medical and
well, we discussed that the other day. We said, you know, it's not hypothetical. We actually had a structure fire out on Natural Trail not too awful long ago, and I mean that is an extremely long run for us to get out there.
Taking care of our citizens is the most important. So if there's something you need the mayor and us to look at to get those firefighters back into that station, let us know, because that's important. Do we have Station 2 back?
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. I appreciate
Talk
that.
to the senior center. If we're only talking about sleeping hours, you might be able to set it won't be luxurious, but maybe you could set up some cots over there, and they'll be right there by that station.
Well, the problem is daytime hours. Well, I mean, we need to be back down there 100% of the time. I mean, and it's, you know, it's not a matter of daytime and nighttime. I mean, people don't pick and choose when they get sick.
Mold is throughout. It's not just the sleeping quarters.
The entire living quarter side of things, the bay, is fine. But the entire living quarters is all, you know, it's being affected. Yeah. So, I mean, the beds that are in there, they're foam mattresses. Those have to go bye-bye. We've already checked to see if we could even remediate those and make those usable again. I've already ordered some new ones. You know, doing the best we can. I actually went out because we had guys sleeping on air mattresses, and I said, I can't do that. I can't have guys sleeping on air mattresses. So I went and bought, 4 box springs and mattresses, the cheapest ones I could find. But we're on mattresses and we're off the floor. We're not on an air mattress. I mean, that's not very. I can't even imagine if I had to sleep on an air mattress and try to get up the next morning. That would be a bad thing. Now they have, being in their 20s on most of them side, but. Anyway.
While everybody else points fingers, if there's something the city can do in the meantime and then settle up on the back end, please let us know, because that's important.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I would love nothing more, but yeah, I kind of shied away and balked at that $9,200 price tag. Right. Now, I don't see that. In talking to the general contractor, he said, "Man, I can get somebody in there and start remediating today." And I said, yeah, that'd be great. I said, but we have to figure out what the true issue is behind all of this, or otherwise a year and a half from now, we're going to be looking at the same thing. I mean, we got to fix the problem as well as remediate the station so we can get people back in there. But yeah, I mean, as a chief, I hate the fact that I don't have people in that building tonight, you know. That doesn't make me feel good at all, not having people where they should be to cover the citizens the way, you know, we want to, so.
Let us know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any additional council member comments? Seeing Michael, Councilmember Tierney?
One quick question, I'll make it short. Since we're closing in on opening the new third entrance, where are we at as far as a roundabout for White Oaks?
We have a RFQ out for engineers.
Any timetable for when we'll get something back on that?
When we'll select architects
Or we'll get-
or engineers.
I mean,
Yeah, so there's currently no money to start designing another roundabout. So we could either come and ask for that. My goal is to select engineers, and the goal is to, MetroPlan has an application period opening up here pretty quick.
Okay.
That the idea is to apply in conjunction with North Little Rock to get that going.
Right. And one other quick question, since we're tabling the roundabout at South Odom and Club Manor, what do we need to do to get something more hard evidence going as far as figuring out what would be entailed to get a street light there?
Well, we would probably open up more funding, I guess, to run a study would be the first step after hiring the engineers to do that, which could be done with a budget resolution.
Okay.
To his point, one of the things that I heard from this whole process was that a study had never been done. Even former Mayor Watson said that he called it a warrant study. Had never been done, I don't believe, to even justify a roundabout or a traffic light, and he recommended even doing that, so.
Right. I drive that intersection all the time, and it can be dicey at certain times. Most of the time, it's pretty easy to get through.
Especially on Odom, yeah. Or if you're patient, I think it's really easy. 'Cause I do the same thing. I say patient meaning just stop trying to get anywhere and you'll get across without a problem. Or turn right. But so if the council wants a budget resolution on study for a light at that intersection, I'm happy to oblige.
I think that's necessary.
Yeah.
Okay.
And may I, before we go down the traffic light path, I would rather see a study to determine what the best method is and not focus in on another option that we think is the best, but just study it, see if it's actually
As
needed.
Councilmember Saunders said, we've got to do something there because there is a hazard there. So just get the ball rolling again. Yeah.
Okay. So what, and I'd rather ask this question now than go through it. What if we get a study then and it says a roundabout's the way to go?
Well, that would give us.
I mean, a roundabout is preferred. Where does that put us?
Well, that would get the other one out of limbo.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to avoid is working it backwards. Heck, I don't know which way is front way or backwards anymore. But the idea of going down another process, we've spent over $100,000 on addressing issues at that intersection with a council that at that time was on board with that as the solution. No one there thought it was going to be a $1.1 million roundabout with possible $300,000 contingency. I don't know. I guess I'm just gun shy throwing more money at a problem. But I'll bring we can get some engineers and
Process, look at it. When Chief Pickard brought us the traffic accident report, 9 of the 10 had a had a stoplight. The most troublesome intersections had stoplights.
Yeah.
But
And so
they
what
were on
this-
the boulevard, too.
They were on the boulevard.
And you can't
yeah.
compare
No,
cell
you,
phone
you
and
can't.
boulevard.
But just to think that we have a magic bullet that's gonna solve it, I think what will happen is, I'm a creature of habit, and I'm gonna blow through that stoplight on Odom eventually, because I'm not gonna be used to it. And it's gonna shift the blame from the people that are failing to yield on Club Manor and put it on the people that are maybe running through Odom and then T-boning cars. So that's why I just think we need to study the whole intersection, see what other creative things we can do, so.
Sounds fair, as long as we're moving forward to do something, you know?
Sounds good. So at this point, I can bring a budget resolution, or we could just talk about it in budget session.
I'm fine with budget.
Budget session.
Okay, so we'll bring it up in budget session. I'll try and get some quotes on a study. Did we comments? City attorney comments?
I've given them all already.
City clerk? Then I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion second, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
That was your hardest gavel yet.
That was a 2 hour and 46 minutes.